I just wanted to make sure that up front that I said that, I really do feel terrible for the victims' families, anyone who was injured in, of course, the event. Rest in peace to all those who died. I shouldn't even have to mention this, but of course, I do not condone any of the actions that Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold took that day. I'm simply just documenting what happened and share where everyone got hurt or killed, so that way you all know where everything happened, because whenever you read the stories online or articles, they don't always tell you exactly where things happened. They kind of give a brief estimate. So I wanted to show you guys exactly where things happened and see it for myself. After going through the list and seeing all the injured parties and seeing, of course, all the victims and who they were killed by, it does kind of raise the question, how come Eric Harris killed more of the victims than Dylan did? Again, Dylan only killed 2 out of the 13 victims. He had his hand in a couple of the other deaths, but Eric Harris was the main one who killed the majority of the victims. So I don't know, let me know if you guys have any thoughts on that in the comments down below. But was it just coincidence that Eric killed more people than Dylan did, or was Eric just set on trying to kill more people than Dylan? I honestly have no idea, but let me know if you guys have any thoughts on that. So anyway, we're gonna go through the victims one by one, listing out how they were killed, what they were killed by, and of course, who was the one that killed them. I just wanted to make sure I went through as much details as possible and kind of give you a timeline of what Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were doing before they actually went in and started shooting and killing people. As we all know, the event took place on April 20th, 1999. Eric and Dylan's first class of the day apparently was bowling. I didn't even know that was an option at school. Eric and Dylan both had a bowling class, which was their first period class, and it ran from 6 a.m. to 7:15 a.m., which is insanely early. Like most normal high schools, classes don't start at 6 a.m. Usually they start at like 7:50 or 7:55. The teacher of the bowling class, her name was Christine McCauley. She said that Dylan and Eric were on a team with Chris Morris and Nate Dykman, who you've maybe heard those 2 names before in some of the other videos or articles on Columbine. They're friends. Both Eric, Dylan, and Chris Morris were all missing that morning on April 20th. Ironically enough, though, a student named Jen LaPlante told the bowling teacher, Christine, that she actually saw both Eric and Dylan in the parking lot of the AMF Bellevue bowling lanes the day of the shooting. she said hi to them, but they never made it into the class. Eric apparently skipped his third period class as well, which was philosophy. There was an exam that day on Chinese philosophy that apparently comprised 1/3 of the total grade of the class. So of course it was a very important test that, one shouldn't skip because it comprised 1/3 of your grade. We all know why he didn't go to the class that day. Brooks Brown, who was again one of Eric and Dylan's friends, who had kind of a falling out with Eric Harris. Basically, several events happened where Eric got pissed at Brooks and threw like a snowball or rock through Brooks' car windshield. Brooks Brown's family called the police on Eric Harris numerous times after they found some articles online stating that Eric literally said that he was going to kill Brooks Brown. He wrote that online in his website. However, the police didn't take it seriously, or they never followed through. But yeah, basically Eric Harris and Brooks Brown kind of had a falling out due to Eric Harris saying like he wanted to kill Brooks Brown. At 11:10 a.m., Eric and Dylan both show up to Columbine. They both parked their cars in different places. Eric parked his 1986 gray Honda Civic in a parking place in the student section, which was the junior section. And then Dylan parked his 1982 black BMW on the other side, which was the senior lot, which is closer to the cafeteria area. But on the morning of the actual tragedy, Brooks Brown was actually heading outside to the parking lot and saw Eric Harris and said, "Dude, what are you doing? You missed third period," which had, like the most important test of our class. And of course, Eric said, "Oh, it doesn't matter anymore." He said, "Brooks, I like you now. Get out of here. Go home." Didn't kill him. 11:14 in the morning, both Eric and Dylan went and dropped off their homemade bombs, which were made of propane tanks. They dropped the bombs off, which were concealed in different duffel bags, and they dropped them off in the cafeteria, set them down, and then they left. Now, most of you have probably heard this remark before, but maybe some of you haven't. The main goal or intention of this massacre was intended to be a bombing, not a shooting. Eric and Dylan's plan originally was to bomb the cafeteria. That way they could kill as many people as possible. Their goal was around 400 to 500 people, as the lunchroom was at its highest capacity just after 11 a.m. So their goal, or their original goal anyway, was to set the bombs in there in the cafeteria, have them explode with a timer, and then whoever was able to survive this crazy bombing, they would just pick off and shoot while they came out the door. Fortunately for everyone there at the school, the bombs never worked. And so Eric and Dylan, of course, went to plan B, which was just to go in and kill however many people that they could. At 11:19 a.m., the Jefferson County Dispatch Center received a call from someone claiming that an explosion happened in a field about 3 miles away from Columbine. So Eric and Dylan had set some bombs off in a field several miles away to kind of take some of the police presence that would have been going to Columbine. They wanted the police to kind of be distracted, so to kind of create a diversion and have the police go to this other crime. At about 11:19 a.m., when the 911 calls went out about the bomb 3 miles away, that is when Eric and Dylan started their shooting spree. The first people that they shot were Richard Castaldo and Rachel Scott. So they were shot right here near the west entrance, which is up the stairs from the cafeteria. They were both sitting on the grass eating lunch. Rachel Scott was killed by 4 shots to her arm, rib cage, temple, and her leg. by a 9mm high point by Eric Harris. Richard Castaldo was hit 8 times by bullets, ended up surviving just barely. However, he is now paralyzed. Richard said that he barely noticed both Eric and Dylan when the bullets hit him. He could hear Rachel crying and was sure that she had been shot too. He said that he saw Eric and Dylan around the school before, but he didn't really know them and hadn't recognized them, of course, when they opened fire on them. In 2012, Richard's home was actually threatened to be foreclosed on, which is so sad. Like, he had been through so much. He'd been shot, he'd been paralyzed. He saw his best friend sitting next to him be killed, and they tried to take his house. It doesn't give any updates after 2012. It just says that Wells Fargo Bank tried to foreclose on his house in Los Angeles, and that he tried to get help to obviously stop that from happening. I don't know any updates on him. If you have any updates, please let me know. And then in this picture, you can see Rachel Scott's body. And the way to tell that it is actually Rachel and where she was killed is that you can match up the kind of the air conditioning units or whatever those are kind of that are inside the fence next to the west entrance. From one angle, it shows part of the fence line, and then if you look from the other angle, it shows the air conditioning units and the curvature of like the walkway. And so you can match those up. It's easy to see that that is where Rachel Scott's body was. After shooting Richard and killing Rachel, Eric and Dylan both turned to see Lance Kirkland, Danny Rohrbaugh, and Sean Graves coming up the stairs from the cafeteria up towards them at the top of the west entrance stairs. Again, Eric and Dylan opened fire on all three, injuring Lance and Sean, but ultimately killing Danny. Daniel Rohrbaugh's body is the one that is laying there at the bottom of the stairs. Again, I'm not going to show up close pictures of him because I feel like that would be just super disrespectful. But I at least wanted to show you, at least where he died. The pictures show his body there, but I didn't want to show any that were too up close and personal. Daniel Rohrbaugh was killed by one shot to the leg by a 9mm high point by Eric Harris, and also was shot one time through the stomach and one time through the chest by a 9mm Tech 9 by Dylan Klebold. They injured Lance Kirkland by shooting him in the leg. Lance Kirkland was again injured by another shot by a shotgun blast to his cheek, and it's a very gnarly injury. They shot him behind kind of his ear, and it blew off part of his jaw. But he actually, miraculously, he survived. And they injured Sean Graves by shooting him in the abdomen, his back, and foot. Now, to the left of where Rachel and Richard were shot at, this is where Eric and Dylan both shot Michael Johnson, who was injured by shots to the face, his arm, and his leg. They also shot Mark Taylor, who was injured by shots to his arms, his leg, and his chest. Anne Marie Hochhalter was also outside. She was injured by shots to her chest, abdomen, and left leg. She tried crawling to the cafeteria door, which is by the stairs right there. She collapsed, but she also was able to survive by playing dead. Next, after Eric and Dylan went through the west entrance at the top of the stairs, they went inside into the hallway and they found Dave Sanders, and they ended up shooting and, of course, killing Dave there in the hallway. Dave Sanders was killed by 2 shots to the back by a 9mm high point by Eric Harris. At 11:29 a.m. is when Eric and Dylan made it to the library. Now, many of the witnesses who survived heard many things from what Eric and Dylan were saying, and when they entered at 11:29 in the morning, they yelled very loudly for everyone to get up, and they also yelled that everyone with a white cap or a baseball cap stand up. All jocks stand up. We'll get to the guys in the white hats. Now, ironically enough, neither Dylan nor Eric killed anyone who was wearing a white hat that day. It sounds like Eric and Dylan, of course, did not like any of the jocks or the people who wore white hats, but they didn't kill anyone who wore one that day. The closest thing that happened was one of the supposed jocks, Evan Todd, in the library. He was injured by some shrapnel. He was never killed. So after Eric and Dylan both entered the library, they headed over to the 2 rows of computers, which was by the windows that overlooked the parking lot. And at the computer desks is where Kyle Velasquez was the first one to be shot and killed. Kyle Velasquez was killed by 1 shot to the back left shoulder and 1 shot to the head by a double-barrel shotgun by Dylan Klebold. Also, Kyle Velasquez was mentally challenged. He had been since he was young. He apparently was too scared or not sure what was going on. So he ended up not even hiding under the tables. He just sat there when Eric and Dylan came in and killed him. Next, Daniel Stapleton was injured by shots to his left leg. Mackay Hall was injured by shots to his right leg. Stephen Kurnow was killed. He was hiding underneath the second row of computers, the row closest to the windows. Stephen Kurnow was killed by 1 shot through the right shoulder and his neck by a pump shotgun by Eric Harris. Casey Rugsager was injured by a shotgun blast to the shoulder. Patrick Ireland, probably a very famous picture you probably all saw, the guy climbing out the window trying to be rescued. He was injured by shots to his head and his foot. Next, Cassie Bernal was killed by 1 shot through the finger and right side of the head with a pump shotgun by Eric Harris. Before Eric killed Cassie, he bent down and said peekaboo and killed her. But when he did that, the recoil from his shotgun ended up hitting him in the nose, which ended up breaking his nose. So he was bleeding pretty bad actually from his nose. After that happened, it kind of distracted Eric. When another girl, Bree Pascal, was crouched down in the open right next to Cassie, Eric asked Bree, "Do you want to die?" And she said, "No, please don't shoot me. I have a family and a fiance." He laughed and then noticed his nose was bleeding and said, "Dylan, it hit my nose." And so he ended up walking away and not killing her. I guess he got distracted by his nose. Then Isaiah Scholes was killed by 1 shot to his left arm, through his armpit, his heart, and his right arm by a pump shotgun by Eric Harris. Now, they did target Isaiah Scholes because he was black. And again, I'm just reading what the witnesses stated and heard in the library. They called Isaiah many profanities and racial slurs. And so I believe that Eric and Dylan, did not like certain black people or all black people from what it sounded like. Then Matthew Kechter was killed by 1 shot to his left shoulder, which went through his neck, his lung, and his right arm by a double-barrel shotgun by Dylan Klebold. Next, Mark Kinchin was injured by shots to his head and his shoulder. Lisa Kreutz was injured by shots to her shoulder, hand, and her arms. Next was Valine Schnorr. She was injured by shots to her chest and her arms. Also, some of the many reports state that Cassie Bernal is the one who stated that, yes, I believe in God, before she was killed. And it turns out that she was not the one who stated that. Valine Schnur, she was the one who stated that she believed in God. And she gives her statement about exactly what she said and what happened. So after Val was shot, she screamed, "Oh my God, help me." And hearing her cries, both Eric and Dylan went over to where she was. And it just says that one of the shooters, who was reloading his weapon at the time, asked her if she believed in God. Says that she initially floundered by saying no at first, and then yes. He asked her why, and she said it was because it was what her family believed. Lauren Townsend was killed by 5 shots to the back by a 9mm Tech 9 by Dylan Klebold, and was also shot 3 more times to the front torso, and another shot that grazed her head by a pump shotgun by Eric Harris. Then Nicole Nolan was injured by shots to her abdomen. Next, John Tomlin was killed by 1 shot to the chest by a pump shotgun by Eric Harris. He was also shot 3 more times to the head and 1 shot to the back by a 9mm Tech 9 by Dylan Klebold. Next, Kelly Fleming was killed by 1 shot to the lower back by a pump shotgun by Eric Harris. Next, Gianna Park was injured by shots to her legs and her shoulder. Next, Daniel Mauser was killed. Daniel Mauser was killed by 1 shot behind his ear, 1 shot to his nose, which went through his neck, by a 9mm high point by Eric Harris. Next, Jennifer Doyle was injured by shots to her hand, leg, and shoulder. Next, Austin Eubanks was injured by shots to the hand and knee. Next, Corey DePuter was killed. Corey DePuter was killed by 1 shot through his left shoulder, which went through his lung and out his neck, by a 9mm Tech 9 by Dylan Klebold. He was also shot 3 more times in the neck, back, and arm with a 9mm high point by Eric Harris. And again, Corey DePuter was the last one that Eric and Dylan killed. And if you look right here, you can see the major blood spots on the ground, on the carpet. And those blood spots are where Eric and Dylan both took their own lives. The entire massacre inside the library there only lasted about 7 minutes, from 11:29 to 11:36 in the morning. 7 minutes and 10 people were killed inside the library. After Eric and Dylan killed the students in the library, they continued inside the school, kind of shooting randomly, shooting like lockers, going down to the cafeteria numerous times, trying to blow up their bombs. And it seemed by people inside the classrooms that were hiding, they saw them walking by. They said that they both appeared kind of dejected and kind of not really sure where to go. After they went back down to the cafeteria, came back up, they again came back into the library one last time, where they had kind of the final shootout with the security and police that showed up, and went back to the bookshelves where I showed you, and that is where Eric Harris put his shotgun inside his mouth and again killed himself. And right next to him Dylan put his 9mm to his head and pulled the trigger. Several of the students who survived in the library stated that they heard some gurgling from Dylan, meaning that they believe that Dylan either subconsciously or consciously was alive for maybe a minute or a few minutes before he ultimately died. Out of the 56 people who were inside the library, 34 of them escaped injury. Again, 10 people were killed and 12 more were injured. Pretty amazing considering the fact that both Dylan and Eric brought enough ammunition to basically kill several hundred people if they really wanted to. From about 12:02 to 12:05, both Eric and Dylan were again back up in the library, shooting at the different security and police officers that were down in the parking lot below them. And it says that after about 12:05, no more shots were heard up in the library. And so their best guess of time of death for Eric and Dylan was about 12:05. Although a smoke alarm went off in the library at 12:08 because Dylan set off a small Molotov cocktail burning a table and right next to their bodies actually. And so I'm not sure if the smoke didn't reach the alarms for 3 minutes. The time of death, I would say, for Eric and Dylan was somewhere around 12:05 to 12:08 p.m. So the entire massacre really only lasted about 50 minutes or so. Seeing people being shot and killed in front of you, seeing your friends being injured or killed, I'm sure that 50 minutes felt like a lifetime. And I honestly can't even imagine or fathom being in that scenario, seeing all that carnage and seeing all your friends or acquaintances or even just strangers next to you being shot or killed. I just feel terrible for all the victims and the people who are injured and everything. So just going through all the victims that I just told you about, and of course reading it here on screen, really does show that Eric Harris had his hand in killing pretty much all the victims, with Dylan Klebold again only killing 2 by himself and only having his hand in a couple of the other victims' murders. Don't know why that is. All the other victims that didn't die, Dylan could have shot most of the other victims and they just miraculously didn't die. So it could just be that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this particular video showcasing literally where all the victims died and most of the students who were injured. I just felt like most videos that are on the internet nowadays don't provide all that info, or they give snippets here and there. So I wanted to kind of put it all together and just kind of give you guys every detail of what happened. And I hope you understand that I'm not condoning anything that they did, of course. So anyway, thanks guys for watching. Again, my name is Harmon. I'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good one. See you soon.